On the web and social media at WOLDC News.
And now back to the Carl Nelson Show. On Washington, D.C.'s 1450. 1450 WOL Radio.
And thanks for staying with us, folks. Our guest is author and movie maker Jeremiah Camara. Some of these projects that he's completed: Holy Lockdown, The New Doubting Thomas. Also, does the Church limit black progress? That's part of the Holy Lockdown. Religious Roots of Racism, Holy Hierarchy. He does a whole bunch of stuff about this, about the question of the black church, and is it really helping us or hurting us in the black community? Before we get into that, though, I got to talk about this coronavirus, Jeremiah, because your governor seems hell bent on opening up the state. I'm just wanting to get your thoughts about that. The state of Georgia.
My governor, Carl. Well, if you haven't heard of him around the country, you've heard of him now, Kemp. But some might say he's very courageous in doing this because he's going to get a lot of criticism, a lot of backlash. And some may say he's very stupid, which is most of the comments that I've been hearing, But I think he got tricked into it with Trump, because Trump at first was willing to open everything, and I think he followed suit. And then Trump said he spoke to him later and said that he didn't agree with him. So I think he was kind of tricked into doing it. But you got to have you got to stand behind what you do, or you don't. Obviously, it's not too late to change his mind, but it's all systems go, Carl, as of Friday. But here's the point I want to make about that. For those who disagree with the governor's decision, then stay home. It's really that simple. If you disagree and you believe that we're going back too soon, stay home. That's all there is to it. And you come out, you attend restaurants, you attend bars, you attend salons when you think the time is right. No one's, even though he said that it's open, no one's actually making you go to these places. So again, you have a choice. Yeah.
And they go to church as well. A friend of mine just told me about a church that 7 people have the virus. They went to church on Sunday, broke the rules, and because the preacher told them to show up, and the God's going to take care of them. They showed up, and quite a few people showed up. Now, today, 7 of them have tested positive because they started feeling sick, and then they recognize signs of the coronavirus, and I guess they're waiting for God to come and save them. What do you say to those parishioners?
Well, I really don't want to beat up on black folks more than we're getting beat up right now. You know what I mean? Before I answer that question, Carl, let me just thank the first responders and also thank the employees at Walmart. And thank the people at the gas stations, and the people at the restaurants who we've depended on in order to help us. My nephew has been diagnosed with COVID-19. He's in prison in Ohio. My sister's son, and he's been diagnosed with this virus. So we're all hoping the best, the best for him. There was a preacher.
Well, hang on a second. Let me just interrupt you there, because right before you came on, with some brothers who are listening to us in captivity, because they wanted to talk to the doctor because they're not getting any help at all. And the biggest conversation, they listen to the show all the time, but the biggest conversation they were trying to get in, I guess their phone didn't work. I don't know what kind of communications apparatus they have. But anyway, they texted me and wanted to know more what can be done. And so she gave them some information, because not all prisons and jails are doing the same thing. A lot of them are like this brother, if we believe what he's saying, they've been totally ignored behind bars. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, my nephew actually told us that no one's paying attention to them. He said they're not even heating the food up. They're serving at room temperature.
Wow.
And so there's no heat actually getting to the food. And but he's been complaining about this prison in Ohio, for a long time. And he's going to be getting out soon, and hopefully, that'll clear up. But there was a preacher in Virginia who died, who, in addition to this preacher that you're talking about, he had demanded that his his congregation continue to come to church and all that. He ignored it. And so, Carl, we could clearly see who has the power. Your church definitely doesn't have the power. Your God never has had the power. It's amazing that we're waiting on this God to come and save us, but I don't really understand that, because where has this loving God always been? Like I said, I don't want to beat up on us too much, but we got to change our thoughts, Carl. This is a great time that we're in. I know that sounds crazy, and really, my heart goes out to all the people that are suffering, no matter what race they are. People that are suffering and having a hard time, my heart really goes out to them. And, when I see people, and people that are in need, I'm doing my best to help everyone. So this is a rough time for everyone. But,
Yeah.
This is an opportunity, Carl, also. It's how you look at it. All problems, we have to remember, have solutions. All ups have downs. All stress has relief. That's the law of polarity. It all depends on where are you looking, what are you doing, how creative is our thinking. And so this is the time to reflect, because one thing, Carl, we clearly got exposed, even more so, Black people, to our powerlessness and how we are on the bottom. And all the bad things in society will ultimately trickle down to the bottom. And so right now, this is a time to reflect. It's a time to perfect the craft. You've got these wonderful courses online where you can learn just about anything. Udemy, I think it's pronounced, lynda.com, Treehouse, Skillshare, and my favorite, which is Sparketh, which deals with teaching children and young adults and adults art in a very step-by-step method. So there are ways that we can utilize this time, in order to take advantage of our greatest commodity that we have in this time. And Carl, there has to be a new way of seeing things, a new way of thinking and behaving. We can look at this glass as half empty or half full. But I tell you, Blacks, in terms of their religion, since you brought it up, we are at the crossroads right now. Where do we go from here? We're at the crossroads in society. All things, Carl, must change. Nothing stays the same. I remember a guy told me when I was a teenager. He said, son, the only constant in this universe is change. This is the time to reflect, on our diet and exercise, on how we spend our time and our money, our perceptions of one another, to evaluate how we treat one another, how we do business with one another, what we believe. Our dependency must be addressed. When you access a problem, Carl, you start from your own house. When Black people begin to access the many social ills that we have, you don't firstly point to racism. Racism is a gift. Racism is in the air molecules. Okay, it's in the ground you walk on. Your street in your county is probably named after some racist people who hung Black people over the years. So it's a given. That's part of society. But you start with your own house. You ask yourself, what is it that we can do? Now, it would be insulting for me to have an answer, to say this is the answer, because that's very condescending, if you ask, for me, one person, to have that answer. But we are creative enough, we're smart enough in order to figure it out, because everybody's situation is different. But now is the time to reflect. We can spend this time watching Netflix and watching TV and twiddling our thumbs and complaining about how people are trying to kill us and all this kind of stuff, and complaining and watching YouTube and turning into, virologists overnight. Or we can spend this time in real serious, pensive type of reflection and address some of our issues. You know, if a spouse dies, gets killed, what are the police officers, the investigators, going to do first? They're going to investigate the other spouse. It starts at home. The spouse is always the first suspect. So, you know, like I said, racism is going to be here because people have always been inclined to check the category of the other. So there will always be the dynamic of difference that will cause division. You know, people's nature, Carl, is to improve upon things. You know, find better baits for fishing, find sharper spears for hunting, improve upon shoes, better shoes for walking, better ways to see, better glasses, better devices to see and hear. You know, and the one thing that we have to admit is that prayer does not constitute, you know, as being a better way of doing things. We have to change. We have to evaluate this. We can see from the empirical evidence it doesn't work. Now, we're supposed to have this blood of Jesus on us. And this blood of Jesus needs
I'll tell you what, hold that story right there because we got to take a short break, and I'll let you tell that story on the other side. Folks, you want to speak to Jeremiah Camara, reach out to us at 800-540-7876. Before we do that, let me just remind you that this year, Radio 1 is celebrating 40 years of informing, inspiring, and entertaining the community. Now, the DC Lottery and WOL are teaming up to give you a chance to win the exclusive 40th anniversary Radio 1 Scratcher with over $800,000 in various prizes and cash. So keep it right here for your chance to win on 1450 WOL, where information is power.
Follow us on Instagram at WOLDC News.
And now back to the Carl Nelson Show
on Washington, D.C.'s 1450.
1450 WOL Radio.
And thanks for staying with us, folks. Our guest is an author. He's also a movie maker. You've heard him here before. His name is Jeremiah Camara. And if you'd like to speak to him, reach out to us at 800-450-7876. So, Jeremiah, I'm going to let you finish your thought.
Yeah, I think I was talking about the blood of Jesus. I'm not really sure. I apologize for that. But I was just saying that a lot of Christians, you know, that I've talked to, I get emails all the time. And, you know, I get some emails about how Christians, how they're supposed to have this blood of Jesus. This blood of Jesus needs to be tested forensically so that we can know scientifically that there is no such blood that's on it. We're not exempt from anything because of what we believe. People who call their God by different names are wearing a mask too. No matter what you believe, you're having a mask. And the crazy part is your church is actually closed, okay? So no power was greater than the state's power to actually close your church. And, you know, all we have to do, you know, Carl, it's really sad, but if you just look at how many preachers have conducted themselves during this crisis, you see how many of them have conducted themselves that they really, you know, don't really give a damn about you. They want your money, though. You got Creflo Dollar, who you already gave him $65 million. He's unrelenting in his pursuit of money. He's opened up a cash app, and he's asking for more money. You got Kenneth Copeland, who is his spiritual dad, who had all these mean-spirited rants about tithing and refused to ask reporters questions on, you know, pertinent things and real just questions that needed to be asked. You know, where was God in all this? And he completely dodged all this. You had preachers having outdoor service in very inclement weather, where you had to hear him roll your window down and keep your car running, hear him on the loudspeaker. I mean, you had pastors out here nearly demanding that you continue to tithe. Yeah, like I said, you had the pastor in Virginia, I think it was, who refused to close his church, and later he died. You had Eddie Long's old church here in Greater Atlanta. They were charging $125 for a COVID-19 test. And, you just wonder how many people who are struggling right now really wish that they had those thousands of dollars that they'd given to their preacher, And so just the way that they've conducted themselves, Carl, there's something to be said about that. So if we continue with our current commitment to this religious faith, then we definitely, in addition to having a COVID check, we need to have a mental check, a mental evaluation done. Because you can see here that this same loving God who was never there for you, he didn't keep us off the slave ship. This loving God was never there during hundreds of years of enslavement. This loving God was never there with all manner of racism that's been perpetrated against Black people, from Jim Crow to KKK to redlining to crack cocaine. Why would we ever believe that some loving God is going to save us now? It is amazing that we still are holding on to this idea of a loving God who we have this footprints poem. When you only saw one set of footprints, that's because God was carrying you. Black people have been walking around with one set of footprints in this country ever since we have been here. It's been our own footprints. Nobody's been carrying us. So to continue to believe in this loving God is just a testament to our being in a mental health crisis. There are people, Carl, that says, that they're just want things to go back to the way it was. Things are never going to be the way it was. And my question is, where was it? Where was it? Where you want to go back to the deadly and toxic virus of white supremacy? Blacks have always had that virus. And which is all, we've always been the host that this virus has needed to stay alive and to thrive. Where do you want to go back to continue to be socially on the bottom of every category, economically, educationally, health-wise? You want to go back to that? You want to go back to continually being socially distant from corporate white America? You want to go back where? To segregation? Yeah, we're still segregated because the money is still segregated. True integration is where everyone has the same access to the fruit on the tree. We don't have that, so I'm trying to figure out where exactly do you want to go back to? We're not going back. And we're at the crossroads. We're going to have to change our ways of thinking, Carl. One thing I really want to stress is that as Black people, I'm sorry, but we just don't have the luxury to use faith and prayer and belief as our first line of defense. We don't have that luxury, Carl. That's the definition of insanity when you keep doing the same thing and expecting a different result. Sometimes, the giant leaves the door unlocked. The door is unlocked now. He left the door unlocked back in 2008 when Donald Sterling said what he did to his girlfriend about Blacks hanging around her during the game. The door was actually unlocked, but we did not recognize that the door was unlocked. So we went back to doing what we were doing. This time we don't have that luxury, Carl, because nothing is going to be the same. If Black people could not be monetized, where would we be? What would we do? We have the door unlocked, but are continuing to give up the two greatest and most valuable commodities that we have, and that's time and money. The solution is not in a church. It once was during a time where you could keep hope alive that this would end, but we're no longer in that time, and things must change. The solution is not in the church, my friend, that robs you of your time, that robs you of your money, that prevents you from being the intelligent person that you are capable of being. You have to come to a point in your life where you understand that belief is not knowledge. It only means that you have accepted what someone has told you. And you are not spitting on your grandmother. You're not spitting on your grandfather because you abandoned this particular faith. What you're doing is evolving. You are overcoming the chains that have kept you bound. And so you're no longer believing what someone has told you. So we have to evolve, Carl.
Right. Well, hold that thought right there, because we got some folks who want to talk to you. 800-450-7876. Muhammad is joining us on line one, says he's in Alaska. Muhammad, you're on with Jeremiah. Muhammad there on line one?
Yes. I had actually cut my microphone off to prevent noises. Okay. I am so glad to be tuning from all the way down in Alaska. This is my first time listening to Jeremiah Camara live, and I'm really thankful to you guys, this radio station, and thanks to you, thanks to Jeremiah as well. It's going to be the Ramadan by tomorrow for some people, perhaps today for some other people. I have a sense that, most of the time when we talk about religion, it's easy to bash Christianity, but we say very little about Islam, which is, again, the same brutality, the same ridiculousness, the same nonsense, and it makes me sick to death. Honestly, I can't stand it. So this is Ramadan time. It's about to start, and actually I received a bunch of phone calls from my family back in West Africa. In the Ramadan time, it's time for them at night to go and have a prayer together, and now the government is telling them, hey, no, we still have a COVID-19, and Ivory Coast is the most surging country right now in West Africa. They have about apparently on average 30 to 40 cases a day diagnosed. It's ridiculous. With that being said, what can, my leader Jeremiah Camara say about that? Because it's the same thing too.
All right. Thanks, Muhammad. Thanks for your call. Yeah. Jeremiah?
Yeah, it is the same thing. Your preacher copied the other preacher who copied the other preacher who copied the other preacher in saying, turn to your neighbor. That's been a real big thing the last 10, 20 years. Turn to your neighbor and shake his hand, shake her hand. You can't do that now. Touch your neighbor and say, nobody's going to do that now. There's no exemptions that are out here. I have been bombarded with, these various, online prayers to pray and to do this. And there's this prayer going around saying that, no weapon formed against us shall prosper. That's a lie. Every weapon that has ever been formed against black people has prospered. The boat was a weapon that prospered. The chains was a weapon. The whip was a weapon. The rope was a weapon. Dogs were weapons. Guns, drugs, private prisons, white supremacy.
Actually, well, hang on a sec, Jeremiah. We got to take another break here. I'll let you finish your thought on the other side. We got a bunch of folks who want to talk to you as well. You want to join this conversation with Jeremiah Camara? Reach out to us at 800-450-7876. We'll take your calls after this short break right here on 1450 WOL, where information is power.
And now back to the Carl Nelson Show
on Washington, D.C.'s 1450.
1450 WOL Radio.
And thanks for staying with us, folks. Our guest is the author, and he's also a movie maker. His name is Jeremiah Camara. I'll get back to him in a moment. Just let me remind you that tomorrow's Friday, so you know how we do on Friday. Give you a chance to free your mind. It's an Open Phone Friday. And just reach out to us at 800-450-7876. During the break, got a tweet from one of our listeners in St. Louis and saying that Congressman Maxine Waters' sister is actually in the St. Louis hospital with the coronavirus. And the congressman actually mentioned this on the floor, They told me, and some of the Republicans were making fun of her. But anyway, let's send out some positive energy to Congresswoman Maxine Waters' sister, who's not doing real well in a hospital in St. Louis. Anyway, let's go back to Brother Jeremiah. So Jeremiah, Muhammad was calling us from Alaska, so I'll let you finish your response to Muhammad.
Yeah, I was just saying, as far as the weapons that have been formed against us, they're having Ramadan. I don't care what you call that. Listen, I deal with Christianity mainly because that is the predominant religion here in this country where I live. I do know that places that Brother Muhammad was talking about, as far as Ghana, the Ivory Coast, Ghana was labeled as the most religious country on earth. I think you had 98% of Ghanaians, said their religion was very important to them. Now, when you look around the world and you see how the Chinese are overtaking various parts of Africa, you see how blacks are being hit hard by various things, you have to sit back and ask yourself, why is this happening to the people who pray the most? What is going on here? When I talked about these weapons that have formed against us, the Bible is the biggest weapon that was formed against you that worked. The church is the only functioning institution of slavery that is still in existence. So after this thing clears up, you just had a commercial just now. I think it said mycomputercareer.com. In 4 months, you can have an, IT certificate or whatever it is that they issue. There's no need for us to be dependent. There are too many things that, the internet changed the playing field. As long as you have the internet, you're in the game. Carl, when I look at that video, when I see a video, when I'm watching animal nature, shows on TV, and you see that cheetah that has that gazelle in its mouth, and you look at that poor gazelle, when you look at that picture, the cheetah, in my opinion, is not the hero. The gazelle is the hero. Why? Because the gazelle continues to kick. Even though that gazelle realizes that it is in the jaws of his enemy, of his natural predator, he continues to kick. And guess what? I've seen many times, sometimes that gazelle gets away. As long as you have the ability to do so, you keep kicking. We're going to experience some tragedies with COVID-19. Hell, I might be one of them. I don't know. One of my family members could be, I don't know. But this doesn't negate what I'm saying right now. We have to change our ways of thinking. I was over a family member's house, and I was watching this thing called the Innocence Files. And there were these people who were proven guilty, a guilty verdict had been issued upon them when they were really innocent. And they sat on death row. One sat on death row for 18 years. The other sat on death row for 15 years. And after they were both proven innocent, they both just thanked Jesus. I mean, if you can't see that Jesus was 18 years late, 15 years late, you didn't see your daughter grow up, you didn't see your grandchild being born, you didn't see your daughter experience your daughter's wedding, how can you give credit to a Jesus and a guy after 18 years of being in prison? See, this is what I'm saying, Carl. Right now, we have an opportunity to get out, so to speak, like the movie, of the sunken place. Religion has us in a sunken place. It really does. But it's like, it reminds me of the book that I read 30 years ago, Carter G. Woodson's book, The Miseducation of the Negro. And he said, there's a part in there that said something like, and I'm paraphrasing, but, when you determine, you don't have to worry about what a man does when you are in control of his thoughts. You don't have to worry about what he's going to do. He said, when you make a person feel inferior, you don't have to get them to accept an inferior status, because they'll seek it themselves. If you make them feel as though they're an outcast, you don't have to, order them to the back door. He will go to the back door without even being told. And I remember this very well. He said, if there is no back door, his very nature will demand one. So right now, you're lacking money. You need your money for the essential things in life. But you will create a back door by continuing to tithe. You will create a back door by continuing to go to church, to give up your time, to give up your money, and to believe these nonsensical things. So this is the time for us to evaluate what is really going on. We have that luxury. We do at least have that luxury to evaluate,
Right. I tell you what, hang on a second, Brother Jeremiah. I've got a bunch of folks from across the country who want to talk to you. And Jimmy's been holding for a while. He's calling from Houston. He's online too. Jimmy, you're on with Jeremiah.
Hey, how you doing, Carl? How you doing, Jeremiah?
Excellent. Thank you.
All righty. I was just listening to you, and I just want to say too. I feel you about that, the back door. That's what I think about. I feel like how important as black people, just how important. I think the mind, studying of the mind, is one of the greatest. I think that's where our true power is at. And I was just reading a book. It's called Why We Sleep. Unleashing the power of dreams and unleashing the power of sleeps and dreams. And I was just reading about the parts of inside the brain about the prosphatic nucleus that comprises of 20,000 brain cells or the neurons, but our brain consists of 100 million. So you would think that 20,000 is a lot, but it's not. But the prosphatic nucleus is very powerful. It reminds me of black people, and what that is like it controls our rhythm of when we need to go to sleep and wake up. Within the 24 hours when we seeing light come through our eyes, and this nucleus, it kind of monitors the light and stuff that's coming through our eyes to kind of control our behavior and all that stuff. And without that, nothing else will really be able to function correctly. And I think, like, with white folks, they understand black folks as being that schematic, super schematic nucleus that the system.
Right. Jimmy, do us a favor and put in a question for him so Jeremiah can respond.
Okay. So do you think the mind, the brain, the actual brain, while we're sitting down in our, while we have all this time that you say, is that the most important thing that we should be learning? I mean, that we should be studying the different parts of the brain so we'll actually know why we behave like we behave?
What's your name, brother? What's your name?
Jimmy.
Jimmy, I want to thank you, man, because I never thought that I would get. I've been on 200 interviews or more in my life, and you're the first one who brought up a topic that probably is the most pertinent topic that we can talk about. That is the brain. You are correct. Thank you for bringing it up. Now, I'm not going to pretend that I am a brain specialist, but I have studied a little bit about it because I was really thinking about doing a documentary. Something's going on with our brains. It really is. And I do know that there's a part of the brain that's called the ventrolateral prefrontal cortex. And this is just the ability to make autonomous, well-informed, logical, rational decisions concerning, matters of economics and finance. And it's central to, our financial interest. There are multiple brain regions that are involved in our decision making, and the ability for us to make rational decisions is not studied enough. Something is wrong. It really is something wrong. You cannot tell me that that you would actually get in your car and go visit your preacher and sit in the parking lot to listen to something that you've heard your entire life, that you would be, you would be inclined to reach into your pocket to tithe money that you do not have. So this is getting back to that back door. That it says something about the people that create their own back doors. And Carl, listen, these are rough times, and I don't want to beat up on black folk. I just don't. This is a time for us to have compassion toward each other. I was at the flea market. I'm just going to give you a personal story, and I'm not tooting my own horn. I'm just telling you. And I was getting some paper towels, like napkins, like those flat ones that you see in restaurants and stuff like that. And so I said, give me, I ordered about 10 of them. They were $0.25 a piece or 50 cents a piece or something like that. And the brother was next to me. And he said, ma'am, give me 10. And she said, no, I'm out of them. And I looked at the brother and said, brother, is that all? I said, you want some napkins? And I asked the last how much, and I gave half of them to him. I don't need a book to tell me to be good to my brother. A woman does not need Paul or Peter or Joshua or Jacob to tell them how they need to love their child. See, that's the trick of religion, to get us to think that we are incomplete in and of ourselves. Every other species arrived on the scene with everything that they needed to thrive. A reptile goes astray from its mother immediately after birth. There's no type of bonding at all. And that reptile knows exactly where to go and what to do in order to thrive. What makes you think, as a human being, that you need something to help you to be more compassionate? A 2-year-old shares their toys, like I said, when they're 2 years old.
Right. Hold that thought right there. We'll pick it up on the 2-year-old on the other side. Jimmy, I thank you for your call. We got to take a short break as we're closing in on the top of the hour, so some of our stations need to identify themselves down the line. Stations like 1450, WOL, where information is power.
Welcome to the Carl Nelson Show
on Washington, D.C.'s 1450 WOL Radio and live around the world on WOLDCnews.com.
And thank you for staying with us, folks. 6 o'clock in Washington, D.C., and our guest is author and movie maker Jeremiah Camara. Number to call to speak to him is 800-450-7876. We've got a bunch of folks from all across the country want to speak to you, Jeremiah, but I'm going to let you finish your thought before we take another call.
No, Carl, I'm just elated. I don't even remember what I was talking about, but I'm just elated because I'm sitting up here Brother Jimmy in Houston, it did something that needs to be done, Carl. Some kind of way, when you get ready, there's something that is called, what is the word for? What is the word? But it's where, in order to have brainwashing to be effective, they have to wipe the slate clean. See, when you wipe the slate clean on a person's mind, they're more susceptible to being brainwashed. Our slates were wiped clean of our language, our names, our culture, our way of life, our food. Everything about us was wiped clean when we were enslaved. And so while you had this clean slate, the ability to come in and brainwash us became much more of an easier, seamless process. And this process has continued to this very day. You will have callers that will call up, I'm sure there are many listening, and will defend this God. But from an empirical standpoint, this God has never been there for you. He never will be there for you. And if you keep thinking that some God is there for you, that is where we're going to be justified in having a mental health crisis. We've got a COVID-19 crisis, but there's a mental health crisis going on in the black community. Let me tell you, if white folks want to believe in a God who had a son, who walked on water, who, raised himself from the dead, who healed the sick and did all these miraculous things, that is fine. That's their privilege. They're on top of the food chain, which means if they fall, they're much more likely to be caught if they fall. If they want to believe in this God, in this Jesus, and believe in all of this stuff, they can do that because they're the ones who created all the attributes to this fantasy God in the first place so that they could colonize the world. The slave and the master cannot worship the same God. So he gave it to black people in order to make his plantation run smoother, and we're still believing. But like I mentioned, and I want to stress this, people who are on the bottom rungs of society do not have the luxury to believe in superstitious fairy tales. Once you get off the bottom and you get on top or whatever, you can do that. Because if you're caught, if you fall, you can be caught. We have to think our way out, Carl. We can't pray our way out. We have to use logic and reason and brain power. Now, if we come out of this crisis and we go right back to, I think I was talking about this guy, with this thing I was watching over one of my relatives' house, the Innocence Files. He got a hold of the Innocence Project. Both of them, one 18 years, one spent 15 years on death row. They got the Innocence Project, and the Innocence Project worked tirelessly in order to get them free. They traveled. They used their own time. They used their own money. And when they were eventually freed by the judge, they thanked God for it. And so I'm wondering, when you do that, what incentive do you leave for me to do anything for you when you're not going to give me any of the credit anyway? There's something wrong with the people who will continue to excuse their God. Well, this prayer wasn't answered, but it wasn't God's will. It was his time to go. Well, God knows best. And you cannot continue with that same line of thought and expect to be different in what they're now naming America as America 2.0, because things have changed and things are going to be different. You can't do it. So if whites want to do that, they can do that because they'll look at their status in society, their privilege in society, and it will serve as a supreme justification for them. Oh, absolutely, God is white because we're on top. There's no way they're going to, I even saw a commercial, Carl, and I haven't watched TV and as far as, regular TV in a while, because I refused. They had all these Christian commercials on in light of this coronavirus crisis. And one commercial had it was animated, and he had a white God. Showed his white hand, his white face. There will be many black people who will put their hands up to me and say, wait a minute, Mr. Camara, what difference does it make? See, those are people who are 100% naive to what's called human psychology. But they would defend that type of statement to the ends of the earth. What difference does it make what color he is? You know absolutely nothing about human psychology. Now, during this crisis, Carl, one of two things are going to happen. You're going to have black folks either move farther away from their beliefs or closer to it, because psychology shows that when people are more fearful, they'll cling even tighter to their beliefs. But there are some black people who are going to say, you know what, I give up on this crap. This is my time to think about the detriments of religion, to think why me, the prayer warrior, the person who belongs to the race of prayer warriors, why are we suffering? You got black people right now saying that the governor is opening up in order to kill black folk because we are the primary ones with bars and salons and stuff. I don't know that. I don't know. But you have a choice. Your brain says that you have a choice. You do not have to go into these facilities if you disagree with the governor's decision. It's up to you. That's what a normal brain. So we want to go back to to what's normal. And I'm telling you that what we thought was normal is not even normal in the first place. What are you going back to? You want to go back to where we are on the social rungs? What are you going back to?
Right.
Now you have the time.
Because hold on a second, because we got a bunch of folks who want to get at you, and if you can shut up on the answers, and I got a bunch of tweeters questions for you. If you can shut up on the answers, I really appreciate it. 800-450-7876. Penn is calling us from Philly on line 3. Penn, you're on with Jeremiah.
Hi there. Thank you so much. Hi, Brother Jeremiah. Can you hear me?
How are you?
Hi.
Yes.
I haven't heard the whole show, but I know you have something to do with entertainment. I'm trying to move my way, Carl, to this TV to turn it down. But at any rate, I've been talking to Carl about including young people in our conversations because it's very clear to me that they don't know nothing. And they're hard-headed. You can't tell, I think they think we skipped 22 or, 35, whatever the age is. And our kids are killing each other. I'm in Philadelphia, and I think it's getting ready to become the murder capital in terms of black people killing blacks. So I say all this to you because I believe I picked up you're Muslim, but am I correct?
No, ma'am. I don't do any religions. No, ma'am.
Oh, I guess you. Well, yeah. See, you and I. Well, it's interesting because somebody in a doctor's office told the doctor when I said Assalamu alaikum, and I am not a Muslim, but I greet them with honor, and said they didn't think I was sincere. Well, what in the world is that? In other words, we are doing too much picking apart. Carl, I wish you, and I have one other thing to say. Wish we could get a month of just picking each other apart because black folks are going under. Now, I wanted to say one thing to you. Carl, I saw a show that and I'm going to mention it because I don't believe it's on anymore. It's called The Doctors. And with some, you know what show I'm talking about? Good. Yeah, The Doctors.
I do. I think I got a slave sermon with one of the Doctors episodes in there. But go ahead.
All right. Oh, now let me finish. So I, it just happens to come on after I'm watching the morning news. They haven't mentioned one thing. I'll tell you the good news and the bad news. They have not mentioned one thing about Corona, so or COVID, whatever you want to call it, in the last month, which makes you think the show must have been canceled. They haven't mentioned one word. Whoever heard of a show called Doctors? Not one. But Carl, I was thinking about you because the positive is one of these reruns I saw.
Okay, well, hang on a second, Ben. We got to take a short break here and just put in a question for him so Jeremiah can respond. Because you got a lot of people want to talk to him, and we got a lot of tweets, too. 800-450-7876 to speak to Jeremiah Camara. Your calls are all coming up next after this short break right here on 1450 WOL, where information is power.
And now back to the Carl Nelson Show.
On Washington, D.C.'s 1450.
1450 WOL Radio.
And thanks for staying with us, folks. Our guest is Jeremiah Camara. When we left, we're speaking with Penn in Philly. So, Penn, put in a question for him. I got a bunch of folks who are trying to get it. Please.
I'm going to tell you, wait a minute. I'm going to tell you what the question is. Can he help creatively? But I want to go back and just say a couple of things, Carl. On this show, The Doctors, they had a young white woman. And she was, because I'm thinking about how you're going to incorporate young people. That's what I'm thinking about. And she was talking about, they were asking her, do you always want to be an influencer? What are you going to do after you finish that? We're not
Ben, do us a favor. No, do us a favor. Put the question to Jeremiah. He's got a lot of people who want to speak to him. We can talk about young people tomorrow. Your question, please? Okay, we're going to move on because we got a bunch of folks. Please, folks, when you come on, just have your question ready for Jeremiah. It's unfair for the other folks who are on hold. Folks who tweeted. I got a tweet here from Mark from Anaheim, and he said that during the 1992 Los Angeles civil unrest riots, he went to the predominantly black First AME Church, Fame, on the first Sunday after the rioting began. He never heard any gospel from the Bible. All he heard was backslapping, bragging about famous white Hollywood celebrities and politicians who were in the audience. Later, Fame allegedly received $250,000 from FEMA. Jeremiah says, please address the role of many black ministers when it comes to controlling black activists within the black communities.
They're insatiable, Carl. That's all I can say. I know you got a lot of callers, so we'll get to it. They're insatiable. It's like a lion who, is used to eating grass, and once they get a taste of that blood, now they're straight carnivores. These preachers have got a taste of that money. And once they get a taste of that money, they get to smelling themselves, as the old folks used to say, and they really see themselves as being special and somewhat different than we are.
Okay, we'll keep moving. 800-450-7876. Sandy's been home for a while, calling from Alabama. She's on line 4. Sandy, you're on with Jeremiah.
Hey, thank you again, Brother Carl, for taking my call. And Brother Jeremiah, man, you're on fire. I agree with a lot of what you're saying, but I'm going to put in a question, a couple comments. Do you believe in a higher being? How do you think we came to exist?
That's a question I've been asked 1,000 times, and it doesn't matter what Jeremiah Camara believes. It really doesn't. And what I know that the information that I have about evolution is real. And you can line it up from here to Washington, D.C., and it has stood the test of time. I think we're all connected. But as far as we look at this whole evolution thing, boy, if we don't evolve from this virus, we were created, we will all be dead now. If there was a such thing called creation, we'd all be dead. We must have that ability to evolve every virus and everything that has come our way so the next generation can live. So do all other animals need to have that ability. But as far as believing in a higher power, my mother was a higher power. My father was a higher power. I don't need to believe that I'm on the phone right now on the Carl Nelson Show. This is something that I know. Belief means just an acceptance that something is true. And so I don't want to spend my life in the there and then. I want to spend my life in the here and now. If there was a God, what is his job description? What does he do? What does he do? Where is he? If I was to believe in a God, I guarantee you this, my God would be a superhero. He would have the ability to stop bullets. If I was to believe in a God and pray as much as I did, black people would not be on the bottom. I tell you that. So I've never, and I asked this question at a college one time, in Fayetteville, North Carolina, college to young people, by the way. The caller was mentioning young people. You know, what is his description? Does he stop wars? No. Does he prevent crime? No. Does he stop high blood pressure? No. Does he stop rheumatoid arthritis? Does he keep your son from going to prison? What does he do? And so I asked this question, and the young people said he doesn't have to do anything. He died for us, and so all his work has already been done. I don't even know how to respond to that.
So you know, one of the gentlemen called and he talked about the mind. So if you believe in evolution, then you believe that things are kind of cyclic as well, right? So maybe at one point in time, generationally, not this generation, obviously, maybe black people are on top. Okay, maybe there's a reason why.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I'm not.
But on top of what though? And on top of whom?
But here's.
You see what I mean?
No. I get you. I agree with a lot of your points, probably about 90% of your points. I agree with what you're saying about religion. There's no religion in the Bible. Don't you believe? So this is another belief question, right? So I think, you know, from history documents, reading, right, that things have been distorted, right? The white man has distorted who we are, what we are. You talked about that. We had a language. We had a culture. Those things were destroyed through the rape of our culture, through that mind rape. There's a legacy of trauma within the black community. I get where you're going when you said, okay, we can't continue to do the same things. We can't continue to fall. Carl had a brother on his show yesterday. I think it was Dr. Fox. I brought his book. I haven't read his book yet, but it's Addicted to White. I really believe that's where we're at now. We're so addicted to white. We're still addicted to their whole religious systems. You know what I'm saying? So it's not like we're not reading the Bible.
We have Stockholm syndrome.
Right. You gave a great example about how someone's going to a sermon and it ain't come out with one scripture. You see what I'm saying? All they're doing is hallelujah, whatever, but they're not teaching you the Bible. And so while I believe what you said about religion, I don't believe in religion either, but I believe in the Bible. The Bible has been so distorted, just like our history. And so
if I was to say, if there were some good things and good information in the Bible, if there was no good things, I would need my head examined. Listen, I'm looking at my bookshelf right now in my office where I'm doing this interview, and it's probably got about 700-800 books, mainly. Every single one of those books, I can find some very good, useful information. Every one of them. The Bible does not have a monopoly on good information. You take the good information, you use it. The other parts of it, where it's killing children, where there's cannibalism going on, where it's killing children for the most innocuous offenses, where it's saving the foreskins of different people. I mean, it is the craziest book on the planet. And if I look at these things, whether they're literal or whether they're metaphorical, it just represents one source of knowledge. The world has a kaleidoscopic array of knowledge that's out here. And for us to get mesmerized and glued and stuck on the idea that we must diligently, fervently dissect the Bible to the point where we totally understand and now we're going to move forward is very impractical and very impractical and non-pragmatic when it comes to us getting off the bottom of the food chain. There are books that are written by medical doctors, by homeopathic doctors, naturalists, that we can read to help us get off the bottom of the food chain that will help with our health.
Okay,
there are many things that we can do. So I'm not holding the Bible in sacred esteem.
All right. All right. Sandy, thank you for your call. 800-450-7876. Line 1, Eli. Eli, where are you calling us from?
Oh, great honor. I'm calling from Cincinnati, and this is
okay.
This is my brother. This is his brother from another mother. I love you, man. I love you.
Hey, man, love you too, brother. Love you too.
But let me say first that Jeremiah, he has. Well, he's my brother. I'm gonna try to do this real quickly, but back in I think '96, I moved down to Atlanta, and I have a brother down there who is a minister. Been a minister since he was 14 years old. Great and powerful minister. I love my brother to death, but to life. But when I got down there, I needed to do some things quickly, because I had a family, a young family here in Cincinnati, as Jeremiah knows, because we from the same town, same neighborhood. Rough place. So Atlanta was good for me. I was there for close to 8 years. And but when I got down there, my brother, who was a preacher, he couldn't identify with my needs or my condition at the time, which was an emergency condition. And I'm associated with the Freedom Church, the Hamley Zion Church. That's what we grew up in, and then also Orthodox Church, the Ethiopian and the Eritrean Orthodox Church, and the Greek Orthodox Church. And I when I was down there first time, I met a Greek Orthodox priest, a black priest, metropolitan, and
hang on a second, Eli. We got to take a short break, so stay with us. I'll let you pose your question for Jeremiah on the other side. Folks, this year, Radio 1 is celebrating 40 years of informing, inspiring, and entertaining the community. The DC Lottery and WOL are now teaming up to give you a chance to win the exclusive 40th anniversary Radio 1 Scratcher with over $800,000 in various prizes and cash. So keep it right here for your chance to win on 1450 WOL, where information is power.
And now back to the Carl Nelson Show
on Washington, D.C.'s 1450.
1450 WOL Radio.
Thanks for staying with us, folks. I guess he's an author. He's also a movie maker. His name is Jeremiah Camara. You may have heard of some of his productions, like The Holy Hierarchy or The Religious Roots of Racism, or Does the Black Church Limit Black Progress? Those are some of the topics that he tackles on his books and his documentaries. Let's go back to Eli in Cincinnati. Eli, your question for Jeremiah.
So let me make this brief. When I got to Atlanta, I knew nothing about it. My brother put me in the middle of a place called Bankhead in a house in a thing, and Jeremiah rescued me. So this right here, man, this man, in terms of moral aptitude, I trust an atheist before, a preacher any day, even if it's my own flesh and blood. But my question, my point, because I've been listening to what you're saying, Jeremiah, I'm saying also that we need to dig deeper into our own cultural heritage, which is, it has a spiritual essence to it. We are agrarian people with a spiritual essence, a life. We deal with the life force, and our mind, the mental level, the mental plane, which is what I know you're demonstrating things on, is one plane, but then there's also a spiritual plane. What's your consideration about that?
All right. Well, let me say this. First of all, it's like what we were in terms of our spirituality. Some people can find those things, but if we're trying to find it out of the Bible, I'm saying this: that's been in a train wreck, and we don't recognize that body anymore. In terms of spirituality, for me to say that I'm a spiritual person is like water saying I'm wet. If that is in me already, it's going to come out. It's just like my dog. I have a German Shepherd, and I had a West Highland Terrier who looked nothing like a wolf, but it came from that wolf. And when I look at the dogs and I see the dog's behavior, I still see those wolf attributes in the dogs. How it smells and what it does, no matter how big or small the dog is, it has the attributes of that wolf. So as far as spirituality is concerned, whether I look into it or study it or not, me helping my brother is a spiritual act, so to speak. Me helping my sister is a spiritual act. I've been married for 31 years. That is a spiritual act. I have told the truth to my children. That is a spiritual act. So any of these elements that I bring out that may also possess the qualities and the strains from Africa that are within that, then so be it. Whatever is in me is going to come out. But for us to claim that we are spiritual is redundant, because that's like saying, like the desert saying, I'm dry, or the desert saying, I'm barren. We know that because we are ethereal beings. We're vibrating. If you looked at us through high-powered microscopes, that's without being said. But the most important thing is how we treat one another, regardless of how far we go with the written spirituality.
All right. 800-450-7876. Thank you, Eli. Let's go to Indianapolis on line 5. Perry's waiting for us. Perry, you're on with Jeremiah.
How you doing, Carl? Listening to you, and you seem you went around the circle and got to some meat to your conversation, because I heard you say prayer is not the answer, and I can only say I don't know how old you are, but our ancestors and some of the people that came to this country from slavery, the only thing they had was faith within themselves, and that faith that got them through. My grandmother, and I'm in my 60s, I look at her faith that got her through, and she did believe in this Christianity, but she also had a deeper faith than that. She believed in the golden rule and things of that nature. Now, I just heard you say that you do align with spirit, and I think that is the problem. That's why we're on the bottom right now, is because we are not aligning with spirit. We're aligning with, especially the younger people. They don't have, it's a godless world right now in a lot of ways. They are not aligning with the spiritual qualities that keeps us under the shelter of the Most High. And I only want to say, you're right in a lot of things you're saying about different things, but I think you need to bring it back home to that spirituality that you just spoke about, because, again, I didn't get that in the first part. That's what prompted me to call you. Can you address that, sir?
Absolutely. First of all, our ancestors were our aunts and our uncles and our grandmother. They weren't necessarily people who lived, they were, but we're not. When we talk about ancestors, we got to talk about the immediate past as well, not just the ancestors 200 or 300 years ago. But let's look at it like this. Let's take jazz music for an example. Jazz music has ancestors, and the new guys that's coming along now appreciated what they had, but they evolved. They had to grow. If Miles Davis was to come back and say, damn, y'all still playing the same thing, that's the same way with our ancestors. The reason why the faith got them through in the first place is because that was all they had to hold on to. They did not have the luxury of white society. They did not have.
They could have folded. They could have folded. They had a choice in their mind. They could have folded, and they wouldn't have been enslaved. Just like a lot of other cultures, they couldn't enslave.
Really, they didn't have.
They didn't fold. They had a strength. They had the strength.
Really, they didn't have a choice, because there was slavery. There was a difference between a person who was a Christian and an enslaved black who was not a Christian. There was a difference between those two. So in order for me to be a Christian, I had to believe a certain thing. I really didn't have a choice if I wanted to stay alive. The church was the only semblance of power that we had. It was the only institution to where I was Mr. Jones now. I wasn't a boy, but I was somebody. A school teacher and a pastor were the positions back in the day. But that does not mean what, and I heard somebody say this, what Grandma told us was true, even though what she told us was not the truth. And I know that's kind of conflicting, but that's the facts. She told us the truth according to what she knew was to be the truth. As far as God not in their lives, listen, when Tyrone and them get in trouble, the answer is not prayer. The answer might be to instead of tithing, save your money so that Tyrone can get a tutor so he won't sit in the back of the math class now. So he'll sit in the front of the math class. Things have changed now. And we can't keep that same dynamic of prayer. If prayer really worked, black people would not be on the bottom because empirically speaking, prayer does not work. If you say your prayers are answered, that is the ultimate example of what they call bias confirmation. You're confirming your own bias. But that is not a viable solution. That's one of the problems with Christianity. Christianity teaches people that prayer, faith, belief, praise, and worship are proven techniques that will bring about our desired results, that will solve our problem. But based upon the empirical evidence all around us, we clearly see that this is just not the case.
All right, we keep rolling. 800-450-7876, line 2. Lisa's calling us from the ATL. Lisa, you're on with Jeremiah. She's gone. All right, let's go to line 3. Taisha's also in Atlanta. Taisha, you're on with Jeremiah.
Hello?
Yes, you're on the air.
Good afternoon. My name is Taisha. I'm calling from Atlanta by way of Cincinnati, Ohio. I just want to say good evening to everyone. Mr. Camara, I just want to say thank you for your work. I watch Holy Hierarchy, Contradiction. I also have a copy of Holy Lockdown. And I just want to ask you a question. Right now, those of us who are not, who have come out of Christianity, who are not, drinking the Kool-Aid and seeing that the church was actually, it was just useless to us because they had no supplies on hand for anyone during this COVID, no resources, no nothing. Can you give words of advice to those of us who are, outside of the church, and we know that there's going to be that we're in this new normal where it's not going back to the way it was. It's going to get worse. So do you have any words for us to continue on this fight and how to bring awareness and to thrive in this? Thank you for your time.
Let me tell you, I have thanks for calling, and you're from my hometown, Cincinnati. But listen, in my house, my mother called my house the drop-in center because so many people have lived with us. We've housed people who didn't have places. At my job, I've hired 21 felons. I will only hire you if you have a felon. So our answers are amongst ourselves. If I don't have, my job is to help you. If I don't have, your job is to help me. We help one another. We're, as far as my house is concerned, like I said, my mother called it the drop-in center. I am very fortunate to, my children, they always have their friends over here. So I'm always around millennials, always. I love millennials. I just do. Their way of thinking is very, very fresh. I can ask my youngest child, my daughter, who's 20, how old is she? 25, I think. Okay, my youngest, right? Her approach and her freshness to ideas are there. But
all right, hold that thought right there, Jeremiah. We got to take a short break. I'll let you finish telling me about your daughter on the other side. We got a bunch of folks still want to talk to you. 800-450-7876 to speak to Jeremiah Camara. Your calls are all coming up next, right here on 1450 WOL, where information is power.
Follow us on Instagram at WOLDC News.
And now back to the Carl Nelson Show.
On Washington, D.C.'s 1450.
1450 WOL Radio.
And thanks for rolling with us, folks. And our guest, he's an author, he's also a movie maker. His name is Jeremiah Camara. Look him up. The number to call to speak to him, 800-450-7876. Tomorrow is Friday, so you know how we start our weekends here at WOL. We give you a chance to free your mind. It's an open phone Friday, so tell all your friends to keep their radios locked. If you're in there in DMV on 1450 WOL. So, Jeremiah, I'm going to let you go back. You was telling us about one of your daughters.
Yeah, and I'll be quick about it. But I was just saying how I love my daughter, my son, their children, my oldest. Their approach is very fresh. Like, if the adults would stop this prayer, send them to church. If you leave them alone, they will do exactly like nature. If you just left Central Park alone, it would become the rainforest again. If we left New York City alone, you wouldn't know it 1,000 years from now. Leave the children alone. Quit telling them that, listen, about this God that you can only find in this book. Let me tell you something. God is promoted as a healer and a provider, right? But people are marred by what happens to them. If God were truly real and the Bible was, all of this stuff and this prayer stuff was really real, the greatest service for a God would be in the realm of prevention. Why did you not prevent this from happening? We don't need to send all these praises out once this virus is already here. So what were we doing wrong? Huh? Were we bad? Were we being bad? Oh, really? So where were the viruses during enslavement? Where were the viruses during certain holocausts? Where were those viruses? It's not the fact that these are natural things that happen. Earthquakes do happen. Viruses, whether they're man-made, or natural, there are natural deadly viruses that are out here. The earth does have hiccups that cause damage. So the one caller said you took God out the children. Like, what are we supposed to tell them? God's going to be there for you? When you keep introducing that, you take the onus off of themselves. You are absolving them of responsibility when you put it, on the shoulders of somebody else. You will always be dependent. We have been dependent long enough, and we need to eradicate ourselves from the mindset that some God is going to come along and save us and rescue us and take us to a better place.
All right. 800-450-7876 on line 4. We have someone calling from Alabama. Doesn't want to give his name. Anonymous on line 4. You're on the air with Jeremiah.
Yes. How are you doing today? How you doing, Jeremiah and Carl?
Yeah, excellent.
Okay. Yeah. This is what I wanted to say. Right. Someone asked me, like you said, what do you believe in? I said, I'm not trying to find something to believe in. I'm trying to find something to know. If I know something, why would I waste energy trying to believe in something that I know? That just doesn't make sense, And no matter what, and like you're saying about this God situation, it doesn't matter whether you believe in God or you don't believe in God. There are 5 things that every human being has to do, regardless of what you believe and what you don't believe in. You have to breathe air, oxygen. You have to eat. You have to drink fluids. You have to defecate, and you have to urinate. I don't care what you believe in. If you don't do any of those things, you're not going to be here on this earth. And like you were saying, what we have to do now, we have to find ways that we can work together and help each other, that logically, and then this way we will have no problem with growing or going through any type of situation. Because, see, like the thing, like I want to know what your opinion on this here. Okay, we know that they have 400 years jump on us because of all the disastrous things that they've done. Okay, so we know there's 2 things we can't do. We can't outmoney them because they print money at the U.S. Treasury, okay? We can't outgun them because they make all these weird weapons. But we can outthink them any day of the week. You see, what do you think about that, Jeremiah?
All
right. Thank you. Thank you so much. Let me just respond to that briefly. I always ask people, or state this to people. The Bible is not a biological requirement.
Right.
You had the one guy, the My Pillow guy, and they had this corona briefing standing next to Trump. He said, we turned our backs and we need to pray during this time. Prayer's not going to help you more than a respirator will. Exactly. Prayer is not going to help you better than quarantine will. So the prayer is not a biological requirement. Now, you said we can't outmoney them. I'm so glad you mentioned that, because my question is, why would blacks expect to out-money or to outgun or anything like that. Listen,
right?
That would render slavery in vain. You had over 500,000 white men who lost their lives in the Civil War to keep our asses, excuse my language, keep us enslaved. Africa was colonized from top to bottom, from north to south, from east to west. Chattel slavery lasted for nearly 4 centuries in order to give whites the advantage over you. Why would you rob an entire continent of its people and its resources and enslave a group for hundreds of years and then turn around and share your stolen wealth and equality with them? What enslaver or what colonizer does that? So there are 4 or 5 white men that own more land than every black person in the United States combined. You got 4 or 5 white men in the that own more land than all of us combined. So for us to think that the Bible is a biological requirement, that's fallacious. You don't need it to treat me well. Listen, now is the time that we have to understand that anything that tells you that your belief is greater than your deed, that's a con job. You've been conned. There's no way that what you believe is greater than what you do.
All right, we keep moving. 800-450-7876 on line 1. Robert's calling us from Atlanta. Robert, you're on with Jeremiah.
Good evening, gentlemen. I'd like to just make 2 quick points. He keeps saying, leave the kids alone. If they will be okay. Well, the first thing I want to say about that, I would leave them out alone. They just need to learn to leave us alone. Get out of the house. Don't bring your craziness and your foolishness in our face, and we won't have to deal with it. It's not that we won't leave them alone. They won't leave us alone because a lot of them know that they got it made. I think to advocate a parent leaving a child alone when they're not ready to get out of the nest, it says a lot about the failures of the parent or the laziness on the part of the parent. We are here to teach them. I don't want my child to go through it all on their own, left alone. The second thing I like to say is that I pray every single day. And when I hear black people say, if we were praying every day, if prayer worked, we won't be on the bottom. Well, speak for yourself. I don't think I'm on the bottom. I think I'm on the top. And we have to work at building our self-esteem. Too many of us see ourselves as on the bottom. And as long as we do that, prayer or my mama or let my children alone and anything else, it would never work. And I just thank you for your time.
All right. Thanks, Robert. Jeremiah?
First of all, Carl, nobody is talking about leave the children alone. My children are all doing well. One owns their own business, one graduated magna cum laude, and the other one is doing great as well. You think I left them alone? Do you think that all the children who have lived with me, you think I left them alone? You think of the 21 convicts that I've hired, that I've left alone? There's no way to misconstrue what I'm saying in terms of generally leaving them alone. I don't leave children alone. And anybody that knows me and they will see young folk come around me, they will tell you, Mr. Jeremiah ain't going to leave you alone. We're not talking about that. I'm talking about leaving them alone in terms of this religion. Let them think for themselves. And let me tell you, I never once said that my children could not go to church. When their uncles would come down here, or when we would go home in Cincinnati and their uncles and their aunts and their grandmothers wanted to take them to church, we let them go. We never once said you could not do this or couldn't do that. And every time we let them do that, because we didn't force religion upon them, they would be sitting up texting me in church, Baba, this is some crazy stuff. Baba, uncle just gave this much. Baba, aunt just gave this much. So that's not what I'm saying. That's taking what I'm saying and misconstruing it. If you pray, hey, more power to you. But let me tell you something. The group is going to beat the individual 7 days a week and twice on Sunday. Collectively, we are a prayerful people. You know where you're going to find black people on Sunday. except with this corona crisis thing. So our whole culture and way of life has been one of praying. And what I'm saying is we right now being on the bottom, and yes, we are on the bottom. I'm black. I'm part of the group. Yeah, I'm not as an individual on the bottom. I don't really notice the COVID-19. Really, nothing has really changed for me. But I'm part of that group that is on the bottom. So you got to take what I say into context, but I could say this here. We are going to have to change the way we've been thinking and the way we've been behaving. We have to reflect. This is a grand time right now to reflect on a book that tells you that your beliefs are greater than your deeds, on a book that's only really white males had anything to do with the redaction of this book, on a belief system that governs you as if you're not already governed enough. There's a seamless transition between having a man in the field telling you what to do and then having some man upstairs in the heavens telling you what to do. This is a time to reflect on the terrible history and the political creation of that Bible and how humans thrived without a Bible long before it came on the scene. But to justify that, you needed a sin. Sin became the justification. Now you need it because women going to bring forth in bring pain in childbirth. Well, not with epidurals. They're not going to have any pain during childbirth. I'm being facetious, but I'm just saying this is a time to really look at an institution who has robbed you of your time and robbed you of your money and kept you in fear, focusing on the then and there instead of the here and the now. This is a time to see the Bible for what it's worth. Anytime somebody say God is good, my question is, which one are you talking about? Because you're talking about that God of the Bible. I know one thing for a fact. You have not read that book. This is a time to see how gullible this book has made you. Like I say, religion is the gateway to gullibility. Because if you can believe that some man came without the benefits of a sperm and an egg, and is coming back after he was raised himself from the dead and can walk on water and all these things, I got a host of other things that I can sell to you.
All right, hang on a sec, quick, real quick. We've got like 60 seconds, and AJ's calling from Tampa. AJ on line one, can you make it real quick?
Yeah, I don't know.
Can AJ? Yeah, go ahead, real quick.
Hey, can you hear me? Okay.
We can hear you.
Yeah, I just wanted to say hi, Jeremiah. It's a pleasure and an honor to be on the phone with you. And I just wanted to respond to the old slave that called in and was talking that old foolishness. And I just wanted to say I'm 28, and I just want to say that to the old idiot that called. I don't want to insult you, the old fool. That's an insult.
Well,
too,
yeah. No, AJ, we don't have to insult him. He's not here. But I thank you for your call. We got to run. Jeremiah, thank you for sharing that with us. We just flat out of time. We got to keep moving. But thank you for sharing that with us, folks. We're out of here.
About it. No question.
Stay strong. Stay positive. We'll see you tomorrow, 4:00, right here on 1450 WOL, where information is power.